What would Kamala Harris's economic policies look like if she became president? We explore this and more on Business Matters. And good afternoon. Thanks for joining me. I'm Paul Graney, filling in for Don Ma today. Wall Street's main indexes ended in the green today. S&P 500 up 0.1%, Nasdaq gaining about 1.6%, and the Dow rising 0.3% today. Now, many investors returning to mega cap growth stocks. This helped the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq recover from their worst weekly performance since April. Meanwhile, CrowdStrike shares falling 13.5% today. Analysts largely expect CrowdStrike to recover from the incident, but concerns about reputational damage remain. And Nancy Pelosi has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for president. Pelosi praised Harris as strong and courageous and said she can beat Donald Trump in November. Pelosi joins a long list of other high-profile Democrats, including President Biden, who have already endorsed Harris since Biden dropped out of the race yesterday. The betting odds now show Harris as the clear favorite to win the nomination. Here she is at the White House today.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history.
In her first day as a candidate, Harris broke fundraising records across the board, racking up $81 million in online donations. But it's unclear what will happen to the almost $300 million that the Biden campaign has on hand. The Federal Election Commission chairman saying the FEC will likely need to sign off on any transfer to another candidate, and Republicans could challenge that legally. The chairman even citing an FEC provision that would force any candidate to return or refund all contributions if the candidate is not a candidate in the general election. And so if she does become president, what would Kamala Harris's economic policies look like? Here's more.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings.
Vice President Kamala Harris could become America's next president. Analysts say her economic policies would be similar to President Biden's.
She has worked very closely with Joe Biden on a number of issues. At this point, it doesn't seem likely that she is going to digress from the policies that they've worked on together.
Damian Brady is an executive at the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, a nonpartisan research organization. He suggests that Biden's policies are her policies because they made them together. He says that based on Biden's budget proposals,
this amounts to trillions of dollars in new taxes and even more new spending that just leaves the deficit in place over the next 10 years.
Biden's most recent budget proposal includes an estimated $4.4 trillion in new taxes over a 10-year period, according to the Tax Foundation. This includes taxes on the wealthy, corporations, and energy, as well as estate taxes. As a senator back in 2018, Harris proposed a universal health care plan that would expand Medicare. She wanted to tax stock, bond, and derivative trades to pay for the plan. In 2019, Senator Harris proposed $3,000 tax credits per person for most working Americans, part of her Lift the Middle Class Act. This would cost an estimated $3 trillion over a decade. She proposed paying for this by enacting a fee on financial institutions and repealing large parts of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which President Trump signed the previous year. When she was running for president in 2020, Harris proposed her own student loan forgiveness plan. Borrowers could have up to $20,000 forgiven if they start and run a business for 3 years in a disadvantaged community. She later supported Biden's loan forgiveness plans.
And the Biden administration will give out more than $4 billion in grants as part of the president's signature climate law. The administration announced that it picked 25 projects picked by different states, local, and tribal governments. Now, the grants are meant to support the development of green technology across sectors from housing to agriculture. And according to the administration, the selected projects combined would reduce greenhouse gas pollution by as much as 150 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2030. Ahead of the 2024 election, the EPA and other federal agencies are distributing grants under the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. And Delta is struggling to recover from the tech outage that riled global networks last Friday, canceling more than 600 flights today. 5,000 have been cancelled since Friday. Reports of thousands of travelers have been left stranded. Here's one of them.
You can't even rent any cars. I called all of them. We barely got a hotel room last night. We were lucky we got one. I called 5 different hotels before I was able to get a hotel room for me and my husband.
And if you're one of those affected, don't worry. The U.S. Secretary of Transportation says they will hold Delta accountable to all applicable passenger protections. But it wasn't just airlines that were affected. Microsoft says about 8.5 million of its devices were affected by the outage. CrowdStrike itself took a blow, as we said, its shares plummeting another 13% today. And while it's unclear how much money the damages will cost and who will pay for it, one Michigan research firm estimates the number could easily exceed $1 billion. We're now going to bring in our live guest, Scott Schuber. He is a cybersecurity expert and CEO of BVS. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How you doing?
Scott, great to see you. Thanks for coming on. Scott, why is it taking companies like Delta so long to fix the problem?
Well, Delta in particular really got hit with the biggest blow because it affected everything from all their scheduling. And it was really that was the key. The crew scheduling software was fundamentally the problem, which was tied into Microsoft and then certainly the CrowdStrike update there, causing all that havoc there. They just can't recover from it.
So what is that?
Really
what is that platform, the scheduling platform?
Yeah, it's a Windows platform that they use really to schedule for, think about it, crews. When a plane comes in, they have to make sure they have an adequate crew that's ready to respond, meet the plane, meet the passengers, get it all going. When suddenly they're so dependent, 100% dependent upon a digital solution, this software, they're in trouble when everything is down. And that's what happened. Everything was down and it just paralyzed them.
Any idea why Delta were affected so badly and perhaps these other companies, airlines, weren't hit?
Well, I think a lot of it is how well a company can pivot from a digital system. They really migrated a lot of these airlines away from legacy older systems to the more modern digital systems. And Delta is no different. But the ability to now back up and go to pen and paper, writing out things, placing phone calls and emails when you can't do things digitally on a computer, that could be a havoc, especially in the Atlanta area, whereas really it's their hub. So it paralyzed them and they didn't have enough manpower to handle it. And they're still struggling, and probably for the next 24 to 48 hours will be very telling. If they don't get this taken care of, the majority of flights and reimbursements and everything underway, it could really hurt them and do some serious damage to their brand.
Well, I think it's interesting you mentioned pen and paper. Not so long ago, we had the car dealerships also reverting to pen and paper because of one of these ransomware attacks. It just shows you technology. Now, do we know who exactly will pay for this, both fixing the problem and also the lost business? Who's on the hook here?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you really start digging in, and an answer from that would probably be the lawyers who are going to make the most money out of this ultimately. But a lot of the contracts that CrowdStrike has with their customers, and of course in line with Microsoft and pushing this out there, they're actually, I think, protected from the liability of this. And that's kind of scary. So in other words, that means they probably don't have to pay out all of these things. So who's paying for it? Good question. Number one will be the airlines. They were hit the biggest, and certainly Delta, because they're reimbursing meals and ground travel and vouchers for hotels and everything else. Customers are going to be very, very upset, and they're going to demand some reimbursement because it ruined their holidays, their travel in the summer, and everything else.
How about there's people apparently impersonating CrowdStrike and impersonating other companies, perhaps like Microsoft, and tricking people, regular computer users, into handing over their money. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, and you make a great point. Anytime there is any type of disaster, it could be a natural disaster, it could be internet disaster, communication IT, such as this case, what happens? Cyber criminals are listening carefully and using it as an opportunity. One thing they have to be careful of, in fact, the CrowdStrike CEO warned of this even, phishing email attempts, attempting to lure you in. So if you're a victim here and you want to get a reimbursement, you want to get help, you want to find out if you're affected, you might get an email that looks like it's from CrowdStrike. You click on that and it's simply a redirect to another website. And they may try to collect and gain or garnish more information, personal information about you, which then you'll be resulting in a breach of some sort if you give them that information. So be very careful before clicking on a phishing email or visiting websites. Make sure you know that it's properly vetted and you're not being fooled. And just don't be too quick to hand out that information. When people are stressed out, that's what happens. They tend to give out their credit card, their social security number, their travel plans, their home address. Pause and really double check everything. Make sure the person, if you're talking on the phone at the other end, you get their name, their contact information, check the number, go to their website, do a little bit of research to verify.
Feels like every day, Scott, there's a new phishing attempt or some new scam online. Very quickly, about 30 seconds. What's the big lesson for businesses and governments around the world through this tech outage?
We're all too dependent upon digital technology, and that's a big problem, and we're all too interconnected. Sometimes we've got to go back to the basics and be willing to have a plan B so we could switch over to something manual and not be so dependent on our smartphones, computers, and just technology as a whole.
Scott Schuber, BBS, we appreciate it. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks for having me. Stay safe.
And many questions remain after a tense hearing up on Capitol Hill today. U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle was pressed by lawmakers over its handling of the attempted assassination of former President Trump. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez was there. He has the latest.
During his opening remarks, House Oversight Committee Chairman Congressman James Comer immediately called for the resignation of U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle.
It is my firm belief, Director Cheadle, that you should resign. However, in complete defiance, Director Cheadle has maintained she will not tender her resignation.
Congressman Tim Burchett, the Republican from Tennessee, had a stronger opinion.
Are you asking for her resignation as well?
Oh, 100%. She shouldn't have to resign. She should have been fired.
Democratic ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin, instead focused his opening remarks on gun control and gun violence.
What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was a double failure. The failure by the Secret Service to properly protect former President Trump and the failure of Congress to properly protect our people from criminal gun violence.
And Congressman Gerald Connolly, the Democrat from Virginia, believed that Monday's hearing had a political agenda.
I think the Republicans definitely have an agenda here, but certainly part of that agenda is to avoid any discussion of the need to regulate more strictly access to automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, assault weapons.
U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle acknowledged the failures of the Secret Service in Butler, Pennsylvania, and assumed responsibilities for them, but insisted that she would not resign.
The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed. As a director of the United States Secret Service, I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency.
Republicans and Democrats expressed frustration at the lack of transparency from the U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle in exchanges like this one in between Congressman Jim Jordan and the U.S. Secret Service Director.
Looks like you guys were cutting corners. That's what it looks like to me. Is that true?
I am here today because I want to answer questions, but I also want to be cautious.
You might want to, but you haven't answered. I don't think you've answered one question from the chairman, the ranking member, or me.
It's important to note that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson made a brief appearance during Monday's hearing at the House Oversight Committee. Director Cheadle and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson spent at least 10 minutes inside the Republican Staff Committee room. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Thanks, Luis. And in New York City, criminals are stealing e-bikes from delivery drivers. But now, some of the drivers are banding together to fight back. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
New York bike delivery men looking for work through bike delivery services have been getting targeted for their cell phones and electric bikes.
It's expensive, we need to spend like $1,500 for each bike.
They're now resorting to GPS trackers to get their bikes back because they say police are reluctant to pursue the cases unless the criminals are caught in the act.
And police don't really care about the bicycles.
It's gotten so bad that delivery people are now coordinating through Facebook groups to get their bikes back and support each other. Sergio Solano is part of the group, the Delivery Boys Diary in the Big Apple, that has over 56,000 delivery riders.
It's like every day, this problem is every single day,
Members are advised to register their valuable items with the police and to use GPS trackers to retrieve the bikes if they're stolen. But only a small percentage of e-bikes are recovered.
The last few weeks, 8 to 10 bicycles have been stolen. The truth is that in recent months, they have stolen more than 100 bicycles, and out of those 10 bicycles have been recovered.
Sometimes the people they confront are only 16 or 17 years old. Some also fight to keep the bikes. Solano said members of the group recently confronted a robber despite the fact he was armed. Outnumbered, the person fled without the bike. Thieves appear to target isolated areas near bridges that connect Manhattan to other boroughs, especially those with a lighter police presence. They prey especially on those traveling alone, so they often cross bridges in groups. Many riders are illegal immigrants without work authorization. They often have to pay a delivery app account owner between $400 and $500 a month, or about 20% of their revenue. That makes it hard to replace an expensive e-bike or e-scooter, forcing some drivers to go the extra mile and buy a moped or car. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And still to come this evening, Tesla CEO Elon Musk says humanoid robots are coming to his company in 2025 to combat labor shortages. And a major Chinese bank is saddled with bad assets due to China's troubled property sector and faltering economy, is looking to offload $4 billion worth of bad loans. With that and more after a break. Today's headlines. Nancy Pelosi is endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris for president. In her first day as a candidate, Harris broke fundraising records. The betting odds now show Harris as the clear favorite to win the Democratic nomination. Delta Airlines still struggling to restore its operations today, days after a global tech outage. Hundreds of flights canceled, but CrowdStrike says that a significant number of affected devices were back online and operational today. Good news. And U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle says she and her agency failed to protect Trump. But she insists she's the best person to lead the Secret Service at this time, rebuffing bipartisan calls on her to resign. She's on Capitol Hill today. And global tension has beat out inflation as the top concern for investors. This is according to a survey by investment management company Invesco. With inflation ebbing somewhat, more than 80% of respondents listed geopolitical tension as their top concern in the short term. Nearly 90% listed tension for the long term. Geopolitical rivalries now include trade battles between the United States and China and the Russia-Ukraine war. These tensions have become the biggest worry for sovereign wealth funds and central banks, managing some to $22 trillion in assets. And Tesla could be adding humanoid robots to its payroll later than expected. CEO Elon Musk now saying that the car maker will have humanoid robots for the company's internal use next year. He previously said that Tesla's robot Optimus would be performing factory tasks by the end of this year. Tesla hopes to have the robots in high production for other companies by 2026. This is according to a post Musk shared on X. Companies are now betting on humanoid robots to meet potential labor shortages and perform repetitive and possibly dangerous tasks in logistics, warehousing, and manufacturing. And a Stellantis shutdown probe underway. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's opened a preliminary evaluation into about 150,000 vehicles, see if you're affected. This is over reports that the engine would shut down over a loss of motive power and may not restart. The administration has received dozens of such complaints. The vehicles in question include the 2022 Ram 1500 pickup trucks, the 2022 Jeep Wagoner SUVs. The safety agency's preliminary evaluation will look at the scope, frequency, and cause of the issue and consider any consequences. And the European Union is on the road to an EV transition. But French car maker is concerned the journey may need a little more time. The EU will ban the sale of diesel and gas-powered vehicles in 2035, but Renault CEO Luca De Meo expressed his doubts to a French business publication. De Meo says car makers will need a little more flexibility in the transition schedule. The auto sector has been hit with various challenges, including regulatory uncertainty and competition from China. The global EV sales rose in 2023, but have fallen this year. De Meo said that if consumers don't follow the EV transition, he said, quote, "We're all responsible." And lenders are feeling the pressure from China's faltering economy and property sector. As a result, China Bohai Bank is looking to dispose of its bad assets. The Tianjin-based bank plans to sell nearly $4 billion worth of non-performing loans. Bohai is expected to take a financial hit of some $500 million to offload the soured loans. Some analysts saying that the disposal comes as asset quality at smaller Chinese banks worsens. China's economic troubles are now impacting foreign banks too. Bohai Bank is partially owned by British lender Standard Chartered. Standard Chartered had taken a total of $850 million in write-downs in the last few quarters on its stake in Bohai Bank. And China has surprised markets with its cuts to its major short and long-term interest rates. The move is an effort to boost growth there. It's because weak demand and its troubled property sector have dampened outlook for the economic recovery there. Official data shows that China's fiscal revenue slid nearly 3% in the first half of the year. This is on top of an extended decline in revenue from government and land sales. Sales dipping about 18% there year on year. Land sales are a key barometer tracking property sector momentum and local fiscal conditions in China. Its central banks are now hoping that a 10 basis point cut to short and long-term interest rates will help spur growth. And that's all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or feedback for the episode, feel free to let me know. And you can email us at business@ntd.com or leave a comment online. I read them all. And don't forget, business matters. Goodbye.